House says Mr. Clinton is willing to discuss the idea of a simple flat tax, but feels it would need to be done very carefully.
The president's cautiousness is out of concern that a flat tax could create even larger problems of both equity and overall revenue levels. The White House spokesman says the flat tax often gets troublesome when you get into the details. We're going to try to get into some of those details tonight, and hopefully not troublesome ones. Joining us is Barbara Anderson. She is Executive Director of Citizens for Limited Taxation, an organization founded for the purpose of fostering tax reform and tax relief. She's also a columnist and broadcast commentator. Her column appears bi-weekly in the Patriot Ledger. Also joining us tonight is Laura Barrett. She is director of the Commonwealth Center for Fiscal Policy. That organization was founded by the Tax Equity Alliance of Massachusetts Education Fund back in November of 1994. The center researches and disseminates information about the state and federal policies that affect the state's fiscal condition. Welcome to both of you. Barbara Anderson, it's just sort of weird to hear all of these Republicans talking about a flat tax. The last time it got this much play in a presidential campaign was Jerry Brown in 1992.
That's right.
Is it likely they're talking about the same thing?
Well, they're talking about a lot of things, and if I could make a recommendation that everybody do what I did, because here's an economist, and here's how I deal with the flat tax with all the different proposals. I sit down with my last year's taxes, and I take the details that are being handed to me at any given time, and I apply them to my income. Now, for instance, I make $27,000 as Citizens for Limited Taxation, plus another $1,000 roughly for my column. So I take, say, $28,000. I take the exemption they're giving me, which with Oliver Bushka, with the original plan, was $13,000. So I subtract $13,000 from my $28,000 income, and I apply the rate of, just roughly, make it easy, 20%. And I end up paying $3,000 in income taxes, which is a lot less than I'm paying right now. So therefore, by definition, this is a good plan.
So when the rest of America goes out and does that, and the viewers watching tonight, do you agree? Do you think the middle class is going to benefit from this?
Not at all. When the rest of America goes out and does it with an actual flat tax plan that would raise the same amount of revenues as the current system, that's what's called a revenue-neutral flat tax plan, you'll find that if you make less than $200,000 a year, you are likely to pay more under this proposal. The big losers are low-income people who now qualify for the earned income tax credit, and they would obviously lose a lot of money because that would be eliminated. Also, middle-class people, particularly homeowners, who would lose on two fronts. First, because they could no longer deduct their mortgage interest payments or their property taxes, and also because this would lead to a rapid decline in property values.
How do they estimate that, by the way? I've heard that bantered about a bit, but no one's actually said, you know, we know it's going to lose 5% of your property value or 10%.
Well, actually, there was one major study done by DRI McGraw-Hill in which they estimated that a $150,000 house would be immediately lose its value down to about $113,000.
But don't forget why that is. Don't forget why that is. One of the reasons that the housing market is so expensive for most people is that you compute in the value of your home mortgage deduction on what you can afford to pay. So people are paying and have been paying for years more than they would normally pay for a house because they are getting this deduction. Certainly to take that away would hurt, and I would certainly like to see it at the state level too, wouldn't you, Laura? So you could have a deduction for the homeowners on the state income tax, but we don't. But that isn't the point here. The point is, Laura says, I don't make $200,000, Laura. I make $28,000. I get a big break on this. Therefore, what you're saying about it applying only to people earning more than $200,000 is ridiculous.
Well, what about the fact that unearned income, people who live off unearned income, trust funds and dividends and things like that, will possibly get off scot-free?
Well, let's look at some people on
Forbes himself admits that he may save as much as $250,000 a year on his taxes.
Yeah, right. And I'm going to try to separate the discussion on the flat tax from anybody running for president, because I think that's the only way you can do it. And I get some interest deduction on my savings account. Of course, I always have been puzzled as to why I'm now paying taxes on interest, since I already paid the tax on the money when I earned it. So the point of this has nothing to do with the rich. It has to do with, if you earn money and you paid taxes on it, why are you paying taxes again when you, just because you kept it in a savings bank so that someone else can borrow it to buy a home or a car?
Let me just get back to the very critical fundamental question of winners and losers, who saves and who pays more. If you just think about it, there's no doubt Steve Forbes and everybody else admits that wealthy people would pay less under this. If they go from what's now a 39% top rate down to 17%, they would pay less. Therefore, it's not a question of you know, whose math is better. It's just pure and simple logic. Somebody's got to pay more if you're going to raise the same amount of money.
But, Laura,
and if rich people are by definition
to your income.
Let me just finish. If rich people are by definition going to be paying less, then middle class and or lower income people, it's got to come out of one of those other two classes, will be paying more. And the U.S. Treasury Department has said that that 80% of the population will pay substantially more. On average, a middle-class person would pay about $3,000.
I am a typical middle-class person. That was simple math. This is not complicated. I will pay less. So therefore, how can the middle class be
Rich
paying
people
more?
are also paying less. Who is paying more, Barbara?
The business-
What about the
There's
revenue
also a question-
shortfall issue?
tax
You do
done
also have a
differently.
problem of revenue shortfall. If everybody's paying less, what are we going to do to try and balance this budget that we
That's why the premise has to be wrong. Everybody isn't paying less.
Well, no.
The rich are going to pay more. You see, you lose
rich are
all the
not
tax.
paying more.
You lose all the tax shelters. The rich aren't paying much anyhow, Laura. Face it. I hate to break this to everybody, but the rich aren't paying much in taxes. They have all these shelters. They have these accountants. This is so simple. There is no way to hide, no way to avoid these taxes. That's the whole point. Your shelters are all gone. So you're
Jerry
paying.
Brown was considered by a lot of the American people to be insane when he proposed this in 1992. Why is Steve Forbes being given such respect on this issue, and why is it such a hot-button political issue that's being taken seriously now?
Because it sounds simple. It sounds easy. Everybody would love to get rid of all the complex rules. I am in favor of simplifying the tax code. You
Does
don't
it
have
work
to be in
this state?
favor of simplifying the
We've got a
tax
flat
code.
tax in this state. Is it working here?
I mean,
Sure,
I would
of course
favor
it is.
I would favor a simple graduated income tax in this state too. I believe in the principle of progressivity. I believe that lower income people cannot afford to pay as high a percentage of their income to taxes, and that is a fundamental belief that some people do not
The
share.
people of this state don't share that because they voted
Right.
against a graduated income tax.
Right,
So
they-
don't the-
But don't forget, everyone forgets about this flat tax idea. You're going to have this huge personal exemption. I'm single. I will have $13,000 I get to earn before I have to pay any income tax at all. So a family of 4 gets $25,500 off the top before they have to pay any taxes at all.
But back to the issue of the revenue shortfall. How do you address that?
I don't think there's going to be a revenue shortfall. You're going to have these wealthier people paying more. The business community has to pay. It's an entirely different
Most
system for
wealthy
them.
people admitting that they'd probably be paying less.
You can adjust the rate. You can adjust my rate the way I figured up to about 26%, and I'd still be paying less as a single person
Let me just
who only
answer
makes
this.
$28,000.
It has to be either one way or the other. If everybody is paying less, as under Barbara's scenario...
Everybody isn't.
or
I
if-
just said
or if
that
lots
3
of people-
times.
Well, you said rich people are...
Let her make her point.
I've never heard anyone who claims that rich people would actually be paying more into this proposal. Everybody, even Steve Forbes, admits that rich... and Army and everybody else admits that rich people would be paying less. If, though, you had an Army proposal or a Forbes proposal that actually cut taxes for middle-class people, it would lose so much in revenues, it would double the federal deficit right now.
Before you go on with that, I think we should say that Army is Dick Army,
Dick Army,
the
I'm
House
sorry.
Majority Leader, putting the new name on the table
that's
here.
right. And
Okay.
he's one of the first proponents at the national level of doing this kind of thing. And, it's
And
very
he's
similar
also
to
supporting the balanced budget amendment, which I understand you're not. I would not support any tax proposal, no matter how simple and how neat that postcard was, if we were going to add to the federal deficit. So they have to draft this in such a way that it is revenue neutral, so the deficit doesn't get worse.
Well, certainly the Forbes and Army proposals are not, and they admit it. But in any case, if you craft it in such a way that they were revenue neutral, then the middle class takes a huge hit.
President
They
Clinton
don't.
seemed to look at this and say, well, maybe, if we do it right. Do you think there's any chance that the prevailing Democrats will actually buy onto some version of this?
I do not believe, and I certainly do not hope, that they would buy onto a flat tax as these are being defined. I think that everybody right now recognizes that the code needs to be simplified, and I think that's something to be applauded.
Okay, thank you very much both for joining us, Barbara Anderson and Laura Barrett. When we return, Senator Edward Kennedy and healthcare reform take center stage on Beacon Hill today. We'll have that story after this.